Welcome into another Dynasty Rookie Profile. Today we are looking at running back Blake Corum out of the University of Michigan, national champions. And man, I have a lot to talk about with Blake Corum. If you're new to the channel, give us a like and subscribe. We're putting out Dynasty football content all off-season. During the season, we've been going over these Dynasty rookie profiles, diving deep into not only the numbers and the production, the raw numbers, the underlying analytical numbers, but also the film, trying to find the best players from this 2024 rookie class. And we're really looking at the guys that are going to be drafted kind of later on in the NFL draft, guys that are going to be second, third, or fourth round picks in your Dynasty rookie drafts. And we're just trying to find the players that the hidden gems, right? The players that we can hit on in the third round or the late second or wherever we're going to be drafting them. So, man, today we're going to look at Blake Corum, and this is a tough one for me because I know a lot of people are very, very high on Blake Corum, very high. Most websites you go to that rank these guys, they have their big boards, and you look at the running backs. Blake Corum's like top 3 running back almost everywhere you look, right? And it makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong here. There's something wrong with my process, and there very easily could be. I'm not an NFL scout. I'm not an expert at this. I'm just kind of showing and talking about what I see. And, Blake Corum, I don't want to start off negative. There's some positives for sure about Blake Corum. There's a good chance he is a top 3 running back in the NFL draft. There's a good chance he gets drafted as early as the early second round. All those things are good things, and he's going to kind of rise up my board a little bit. He's going to be a player that I do target in my Dynasty rookie drafts. But when I just look at some of the underlying stuff with Blake Corum, it's a little underwhelming in my opinion. So we'll start off with his size. He's 5'8", 205, a little bit smaller for a running back, but obviously that didn't really make that much of a difference. The dude had like 500 carries over the last 2 years in college. So he was a workhorse running back despite maybe being a little bit smaller than the average running back. So I'm not too worried necessarily about that. Again, you see his production, just massive production. Over 250 carries, over 1,200 yards, 27 touchdowns. And then he added 16 catches, another 117 yards and touch. So 28 total touchdowns and over 1,350 yards is insane production for a running back. And you look at his 2022 numbers, it's the same stuff. You got even better. We got over 1,500 yards, 19 touchdowns. So the dude was highly productive, especially the last 2 years in college, really the last 3 years, but huge production the last 2 years. Kind of projected to be a day 2 pick. I don't really see many mock drafts where Blake Corum is not at worst a third round pick. So he's most likely going to get good draft capital if the NFL feels the same way as all these mock drafters, which seems like they may. His 40 was fine, nothing amazing. 4.52 is not good. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad. Again, I went back and looked at all fantasy relevant running backs over the last 15 years. And I averaged out what the average 40-yard time was for those running backs. I believe there's about 49 running backs. And the average 40-yard time was 4.51. So probably not as you would think it was lower because we put so much emphasis on it. But the 10-yard split is a little bit, I've been talking about this a lot. The 10-yard split is a little bit more important to me, especially for running backs. How fast are you within the first 10 yards? Even if your 40 time is not that great, but your 10-yard, your initial burst is really good, you're going to run away from a lot of people. If you want a race between a guy who runs a 4.6, a guy who runs a 4.44, they're going to finish like this far apart, right? The race, a 40-yard dash race is not going to fit, that we're talking about a tenth of a second, right? We're not talking about full seconds and stuff. So if you have that initial burst within the first 10 yards, you can usually get away with a lack of 40-yard time speed. But Blake Corum doesn't have it. A 1.58 is not very good. You ideally want to see it around 1.55, 1.57 maybe at the worst, and anything under 1.55 is really good. 1.58 is not that great. In fact, I think it's tied for the worst in this draft class with like Audric Estime and one other player. So I'll just estimate, obviously not known as a burner. So not great there. Broad jump is fine. Nothing great, but it's fine. So then we get into a little bit of that. That's the combine stuff. We get into a little bit of the underlying, the analytical stuff. We have elusive rating and breakaway percentage are two very important statistics when it comes to running backs and their success in the next level, at the next level. Are you able to break tackles and are you explosive, right? Those two things, you got to hopefully have at least one of them. But a combination of both is ideal. If you've been watching these other videos from other running backs, the elusive rating is that for Blake Corum is at 27.4, which is really, really low. In fact, it's the lowest out of any running back in this draft class, his elusive rating, meaning he did not break a lot of tackles given how many carries that he had. That's concerning. Ideally, just to show you guys, give you an idea of where you want to see this number, you want to see this number north of 90. He's at 27.4. We're not even close to where we want him to be. He's way off there. Breakaway percentage, 31.8. What percentage of your yards came from runs of 15 yards or more? We want to see this number closer to 40, 50, 40, 45%. Anything 50 or above is awesome. He's at 31.8, which is, again, the second worst in this draft class. We're talking about the worst elusive rating out of all the running backs that went to the combine. And the second, actually, I shouldn't say that. There's a few that I haven't looked at, but so far he's the worst and the second worst in elusive rating and breakaway percentage, respectively. There's about 3 running backs that I haven't looked at. So we're talking about 25 or so running backs that he's the worst and the second worst. Yards per route run at 0.87. That's just not part of Michigan's offensive. They don't throw the ball that much. They're a ground and pound team. I think they had a game where they ran the ball 28 straight times. So I'm not too worried necessarily about the yards per route run. They just don't throw. 1, they don't throw a lot. And 2, they don't throw to the running backs a lot. But this stuff is concerning. Now, I do want to say one thing. He was coming off, I believe, it was a knee injury that kept him out, that knocked him out the end of 2022. I believe it was a meniscus tear. Maybe it was an ACL. It was a full meniscus repair. That was obviously a pretty significant injury. I don't think he was able to do much in the championship, in the playoffs last year. So it kind of ended his season. I do want to point that out, and this could be because we saw these numbers dip. His numbers the previous year in 2022 were much better. His breakaway percentage, his elusive rating, they were much, much better than his 2023 numbers. So usually it's concerning to see a dip in efficiency, but you can point to the knee injury. Coming back from the knee injury as potentially part of it. He was better later in the season. And the further, the further away you get from the knee injury and the repair, he started to get better. And generally, when guys have big knee injuries, ACLs, MCLs, all those tears, meniscus and all that, we want to give them, we kind of know their first year back, unless you're Adrian Peterson or something, or Breece Hall. We kind of know that your first year back is probably not going to be that great. And we normally give people the benefit of the doubt, and we wait until 2 years out. So I want to say that, as I'm talking about Blake Corum, that 2023 was his year coming back from that major injury. So that could be part of the reason we saw a huge dip in the efficiency numbers. I do want to recognize that. In 2022, he was like PFF's highest graded running back. Out of 459 running backs, he was number 1 overall. He still had a pretty good grade. We look at his production. Obviously, the production is where people fall in love with him. Blake Corum is his massive production, his career dominator. And again, dominator is for running backs, the percentage of the team's total offense, passing and rushing, and total touchdowns that you are responsible for. His 3 years that he had significant playing time at Michigan, his 3 years, he was at 29%, which is a huge, huge number. Again, went back and looked at those 50 or so fantasy relevant running backs over the last 10 years or so. The average number for their career dominator is 25%. He's at 29%. So the production is there. That's great to see, because honestly, production is the most important thing no matter what. His single season high was 33%, which was actually this last year. His breakout age was 20, which is good. We want to see running backs and receivers break out by the age of 20, ideally under the age of 20, but by the age of 20 is what we want to see. And then his PFF grade at 83.1 was pretty good. I think it was top. I think it was 60th. 60th best out of 440 running backs. So we definitely saw a dip. And again, is that pointing to the knee injury? There's a good chance it is. We look at his other numbers here. Yards after contact, 624, only 2.42, which kind of plays into the elusive rating. If you're not breaking tackles, you're going to have a low yards after contact per attempt. A lot of the running backs we're looking at are like 3.5 or higher. Blake Corum's under 2.5. Missed tackles forced, only 30 missed tackles forced. Again, over 250 touches is not great. Again, that plays into the elusive rating. And then he was much more of a gap runner. Michigan ran a lot more gap run scheme rather than a zone run scheme, which I do think he kind of fits better in because he's a little bit more of a bruiser than he is a athletic fast back. So again, when it comes to Blake Corum and the film, the stuff I see on the film, his efficiency went down in 2023. You watch 2023 and it's just kind of like, okay, you have a really good offensive line. You got a huge volume, but nothing special jumps off. 2022, I will say, was much better when I watched film there. And he was better at the end of the year as well in 2023, which makes sense when you come further off the injury. He doesn't have the athleticism, the elite athleticism that I generally like to see, but it's not the be all end all. He does have good balance. He can block and he can catch the ball. He's not this amazing pass catcher, but he can catch the ball and he's good at blocking, which is going to help him get on the field. Obviously, there's value in the workload he's taken. Teams value running backs that can take a huge workload, and Blake Corum put up 500 carries over the last 2 years, which is a crazy amount. So all of those are positive for Blake Corum, right? The negative, again, is just the lack of athleticism, the lack of ability to break off big runs and break tackles, because you need to be able to do that in college in order to be able to do that in the NFL. But again, the lack of athleticism, like I said, not great getaway speed. His long speed in general, his initial burst is not very good, in my opinion. But I do have to acknowledge that if he's taken in the early second by a team that's going to give him the workload, the Chargers, the Cowboys, a team like this, I have to acknowledge that he needs to be drafted probably early to mid second round of your dynasty rookie drafts. Someone may even reach and take him in the first round. This is for super flex leagues, right? Someone may reach and take him at the end of the first round or something, because running backs are just so needed. So I don't want to just ignore him completely. I made a tier list. I made a ranking list, a tier of 15 running backs. In my tier 1, Blake Corum was not there, which I think is a little controversial for people. I had Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Marshawn Lloyd, and Jalen Wright. But Corum was in my tier 2 with guys like Braylon Allen, Blake Corum, guys like this, who I expect to get pretty good draft capital, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are fantasy relevant and the workhorse running backs. Blake Corum, to me, needs to go to a place where there's volume. Kind of like a Brian Robinson in that sense. If there's no volume there, he's going to be fine for an NFL team. He's not going to be very useful for fantasy purposes. If he does get volume, like Brian Robinson last year, he could be a top 15 running back. So that's where I'm at with Blake Corum. I don't want it to be all negative. I still see a path for him to be being very fantasy relevant, but he just doesn't. Overall, he underwhelms me a little bit from what I expected coming into it and seeing him ranked as a top 3 running back in this draft class. So that's all I have for you guys there. Again, like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out more Dynasty content, more Dynasty rookie profiles, mock drafts, all that stuff, rankings. So give us a like and follow, and we will catch you all